The story begins with Liu Jian, a secret agent from Beijing, embarking on his first mission in the city of Paris. As he strolls through the streets, he passes by many prostitutes standing quietly, seeking customers. With a photo as his guide, he eventually locates Uncle Tay, an elderly man who will be hosting him during his time in Paris. On that evening, Liu visits a hotel and discreetly asks the receptionist for a special message meant for Mr. Smith. The message's contents lead Liu to a bar where he encounters a pilot who guides him to the restroom. But upon reaching the restroom, he's confronted by 3 men who search him thoroughly. They then escort Liu to the kitchen, where he meets a man named Richard, a ruthless police inspector. Liu's mission in Paris is to assist Richard. After their discussion, Liu and Richard observe someone's activities through surveillance cameras installed in the hotel. Shortly after, 2 female entertainers, Jessica and Susan, arrive and are introduced to a man who happens to be the big boss of a drug syndicate known as Mr. Big. Their task is to monitor him, apprehend anyone collaborating with him, and gather information. However, before they can carry out their plan, the big boss asks his subordinates to leave the room for some private time. Jessica refuses and escapes to the restroom. While the boss is distracted, Susan takes a weapon from her hair and brutally attacks the boss. Witnessing this, Liu rushes into the room to stop Susan. In the midst of chaos, Liu calls for medical assistance, but Richard arrives and shoots both Mr. Big and Susan. Suspicious of Richard's actions, Liu makes a quick escape. He cleverly evades his pursuers by using a balcony on the 5th floor, then circling back upstairs to confuse them. His goal is to return to the control room and retrieve the crucial evidence stored in the recorded footage. Liu found himself in a tricky situation as he tried to leave the hotel. Richard's armed men cornered him, so he hurried into the laundry room. Desperate to hide, he squeezed into a drainage hole, but his hiding spot was soon discovered, and Richard planned to kill him inside it. Despite the danger, Liu fought back and managed to escape a grenade Richard threw at him. The chase didn't stop there. Shortly after avoiding capture, Liu ran into Richard's henchmen again and had to fight them off. After defeating them all, he realized there was still a man blocking his way in the hotel lobby. Richard was angry when he learned Liu had survived and had taken an incriminating recording as evidence. Liu, fleeing from the pursuit, opened a necklace containing a message that led him to a locker at the train station. Inside, he found a phone and a stash of weapons. However, the station security became suspicious of him, thinking he was a criminal. Luckily, Liu used his nimble skills to swiftly incapacitate the 2 police officers and make a daring escape. On the other side, representatives from China went to the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs to discuss the case. Inspector Richard also showed up as the person in charge of the situation, but he used tricky tactics to twist the truth and make it seem like Liu was the one who killed Mr. Big. Richard provided several pieces of evidence, like photos and hidden weapons, to make Liu look guilty. However, because the Chinese representatives knew about Liu's background, they didn't immediately believe him and decided to investigate what really happened. After the meeting, Richard told his team to secretly watch the Chinese representatives. Meanwhile, Liu was waiting for updates at Uncle Tay's place. While Richard was at his place, Jessica came to see him. It turns out Jessica worked as an entertainer for him, but she was forced to do it because Richard had kidnapped her daughter. He made her obey him and even had his henchman named Max give her drugs to make her do what he wanted and go back to work as an entertainer. Under the influence of drugs, Max brought Jessica to a place where all the prostitutes were controlled by Richard. By chance, Liu was hiding nearby, and their paths crossed when Jessica needed to use the restroom. Liu felt sorry for her as she seemed tired and hungry. However, neither of them realized they were together on the night Mr. Big was killed. Soon, Liu got a call from the Chinese representatives, asking him to meet on a ship. There, he told them the truth. Richard was two-faced and connected to Mr. Big, and he framed Liu for the murder. But as soon as the recording was handed over, Richard's henchmen, who had been watching, killed the Chinese representatives. Seeing this, Liu fought off Richard's henchmen and managed to escape by hiding in a train tunnel with the passengers to avoid being pursued. On the same day, Richard went to the morgue where the Chinese representatives' bodies were taken and got the coveted murder recording. Later that night, Liu tended to his wounds from the fight with Richard's henchmen. Jessica watched him from outside and offered to help. At first, Liu declined, but Jessica insisted, and he eventually accepted. They shared their life stories, and Jessica even revealed she had a daughter. After Jessica had finished helping, a man named Luco showed up and unexpectedly hit Jessica, thinking she hadn't done her job well. Liu tried to step in and make peace. He even offered money to calm Luco down for taking Jessica's time. However, Luco tested Liu's patience, and it led to a fight between them. Meanwhile, Max returned and accidentally spotted Liu, who was the target of his boss. Just when it seemed like Liu was about to win, Max started shooting at them. Sadly, Uncle Tay, who had been providing shelter for Liu, was killed in the crossfire. In the dusty environment, Liu managed to take down Max using a chopstick, and then left with Jessica, carrying Uncle Tay's body with them. As a fugitive, Liu found himself in an argument with Jessica because she accused him of involving her. However, after Liu asked Jessica to take him to a specific location, they begins to understand the situation. That place was where Mr. Big was killed, and it made them realize that they were both witnesses to the murder. At first, Jessica refused to help Liu because Richard had kidnapped her daughter and accused Liu of only caring about his job. But Liu tried to convince Jessica that if she helped him, he would also rescue her daughter and keep them safe. Not long after, Jessica returned to Richard's place and told him that Liu had held her hostage before. However, Richard didn't believe her and kept Jessica in his office under the watchful eyes of his henchmen. Despite being trapped, Jessica tried to escape while stealing evidence of the murder recording, which she later gave to Liu in exchange for her daughter's safety. Jessica then led Liu to the place where her daughter was hidden, which turned out to be an orphanage. On the other hand, Richard's henchmen realized that Jessica had escaped and quickly informed Richard about it. Inside the orphanage, Jessica and Liu entered a room and went straight to her daughter's bed. However, Richard's henchmen were waiting for them and immediately attacked. As it turns out, Richard was already aware of Jessica's plan and had secured his daughter. Just as they were about to escape, Richard's henchmen started shooting at them, and Jessica got hit in the abdomen. Liu quickly picked up Jessica and rushed her to the hospital. He promised to save her daughter for Jessica's sake. Meanwhile, Richard was in his office with Jessica's daughter, convinced that Liu would come to see him. And he was right. It didn't take long for Liu to call Richard from across the street. Eventually, Liu arrived, seething with anger, to confront Richard. He boldly walked into the office and challenged them to a fight, leading them into a room for martial arts training. Liu, standing alone and unafraid despite the many enemies, caused a lot of trouble for them and eventually overpowered them. At this point, Richard grew increasingly worried and brought in more of his henchmen. However, Liu managed to block their path, leading them into a room filled with staff. There, he faced off against Richard's powerful guards, who were twins and skilled in martial arts. With equal skill, Liu fought the twins and managed to defeat one of them, which made the other twin furious. But in the end, Liu easily defeated the remaining twin. He eventually found Richard's hiding place, where he had been keeping Jessica's daughter hostage. Swiftly, Liu incapacitated Richard by using a needle on the back of his neck, causing a buildup of blood flow at a vital point in his head known as the Kiss of the Dragon. This led to Richard's slow and painful death. The next day, Liu took Jessica's daughter to the hospital for a heartwarming reunion. Jessica was overwhelmed with happiness when she saw her beloved daughter again. A sense of relief washed over her as her precious daughter had returned to her. And with that, the story came to an end. Moral lesson from the story: when you're in hot soup like Liu Jian, it's best to keep your chopsticks ready because you never know when they might come in handy in a sticky situation.